All right. And away we go with our Facebook Live edition as well as our studio edition of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show here. Normally it's Quaker Steak and Lube. We've got a lot going on today. So we ended up with the Dear Booch filling in for the Dear Goon for the first hour. Goon will be with us remotely here in short order. And we are glad to have you along.
I'm glad to be here, Ed.
Thursday afternoon as we get ready for the Peach Bowl, a noon kickoff on Saturday. It is interesting, Booch, as we're getting nearer the game, and I'm listening to more and more national talk shows and kind of the general feeling of the bowl games, and it is amazing to me how drastically things have changed in terms of the way we view bowl games. And the general sports fan, the college football fan, I was listening to Colin Cowherd earlier today, and this is the norm, not the exception. But it's like, yeah, these games are basically just glorified exhibitions, don't matter outside of the two semifinal games New Year's Day. It's like everything else is just an afterthought. And I think this game is a little different, though. And I thought last year's Rose Bowl was a little different because I do think, one, it's a good matchup, and I think it's intriguing. And I think both teams clearly have players that are treating it like it is a big deal. With only two opt-outs, both teams have one, their best defensive edge rusher in both cases, opting out of the game. Other than that, everybody is in. Now, how much we see of everybody, that remains to be seen, and that is obviously a big question and will be a storyline throughout the game. But the fact that you have basically everybody from both of these teams wanting to participate, despite on both these rosters have plenty of guys that are heading to the NFL draft this spring, I think speaks volumes about the importance that they at least place on these bowl games. And I do think it's one of those things that's irrelevant until you're going to argue about different programs or different coaches. And then the bowl games are always used as one of the big comparative notes. While this coach, how could you say he's better? The other guy's 5-2.
Yeah, look at their bowl record. Look at this conference versus that conference in the postseason. Yeah, I mean, look at it. It's not an exhibition game. They're going to tack it onto the record, win or lose. And to the point, Ironhead, look, I think in general, the more prestigious bowls have always had more cachet to them. Right now that we've delineated the New Year's Six, those are clearly put in a category where the players themselves tell you how seriously they take certain games versus others, because you see, as you said, only one opt-out, only one opt-out, I believe, last year for the Rose Bowl, right? I think it was only Joey Porter.
Right.
And, I think the other point for Penn State in particular is the last two seasons, because of the way the schedule has shaken out, the program has really needed this measuring stick game against one of the other good teams from somewhere else in the country, because they fell short against Ohio State and Michigan both years. Those were their only two losses. They were, you can argue over the use of the term competitive, but they were not blown out in those games.
Yep.
And then none of the other 10 wins on the schedule maybe told you a whole lot about just how good Penn State might be. And so you needed to face a top 10 team, or in this case, a top 11 team, but a very, very good SEC Ole Miss team in order to put a bow on your season and be able to make the argument that, hey, even though we didn't get where we wanted to be, this was still one of the best college football teams in the country this past season.
Yeah, and actually, Booch, I think Mississippi's actually in much the same situation. I think both of these
Yeah.
teams are looking for that signature victory. That's, probably an overused term, and I don't know that it's quite the right term, but a big game win. I think both these teams won the games that they thought they were going to win at the start of the season, and I think both came up short in the two games that they would have penciled in as, boy, these would be the measuring stick games for our program. So I think both of these teams have a very similar, I guess, thought process and mindset going into Saturday's matchup.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I said this year, Ole Miss and Penn State are like that meme of the two Spider-Men pointing at each other because same records, same situation around their record. You could even say maybe some of the same types of questions around their head coach
Yep.
about, can recruit a ton of talent. Can he get them over the hump to win one of those big games? So, yeah, I think, and especially if you look at the off season, not off season, I don't know what it is right now, the bowl season, the quasi off season, Old Miss is having in the transfer portal. I think we talked about it last week. They are trying to set themselves up for a special run next year. And whoever wins this game is going to enter the real off season with a ton of momentum. And the other one is going to have a pretty deflated balloon. And I think, at least Ole Miss will be able to fall back on the number of talented players they've brought in via the transfer portal. Penn State, has a lot of good things going right now. I think people are feeling relatively good about the hires at the two coordinator positions. And even though the portal has not gone as well as I think maybe some of us would have hoped, if you can get to 11 wins again, win another New Year's Six Bowl, get the feel-good story of being the first program in college football to win all six of the New Year's Six Bowls, you'll have a lot of off-season excitement. And we already know from having watched West Virginia, put together an 8-win season and then look impressive in their bowl game. I think we're looking forward to a ranked matchup to start the 2024 season.
Yeah, I will say I think West Virginia looked very good in that bowl game. I really thought West Virginia had a good shot of winning. I did not see them dominating North Carolina the way they did, and they really did. That was a dominant victory. Now, the tricky thing I will say with the bowl games is it is tough to truly measure where a program is based on a bowl game because of the mindset, because of guys sitting out, because of the layoff from the regular season to the bowl game. All of those things do factor in, but I was really impressed with the way West Virginia controlled that game. And I do think they're set up to have, I don't think they're going to be a playoff team next year, but I think they're going to be a really solid, I mean, they were a solid team this year. I think they could be, a fringe playoff caliber type team next year. And I do think it gives Penn State an opportunity, if it can win the Peach Bowl and have a good showing, and then beat what I think will be a ranked West Virginia team, certainly ranked to start last season. That's a pretty good opportunity if you're Penn State to get in front of the voters and make your case that, yep, this should be a playoff team with the 12 team format next year. So I think this game is big for a bunch of different reasons. I think recruiting is important, and I think having that signature win or win over a big time program and an SEC school, I do think it matters. I don't know that it's the end all be all. I don't know that there's a recruit out there saying, well, I would go to Penn State, but they didn't beat Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl, so forget it. Or a recruit that's thinking, yep, Penn State's not on my radar. Oh, wait a second. They beat Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl. All right, I'm going. But I do think it's one of those things that you do factor in. It's like, well, I don't know. I'm looking at this program. I'm looking at that program. And it's not just whether you win or lose. I also think, Booch, that James Franklin has really done a nice job of striking the right chord with the players in the program in terms of enjoying the bull trip, the experience, and taking care of business on the field, but also having the communication with the players where these guys know ahead of time, and we don't, but they do. They know what to expect playing time wise, and James Franklin's not going to deviate from it. And I
Right.
think that matters, Booch, when recruits come in. Again, it's part of the overall scope, and there's just a ton of things that factor in. But I do think one of those things is, hey, this coach cares about my future, not just what I do at Penn State. And yeah, he wants me to have the bull experience, but he's going to look out for my best interest as well. And we get to, I think in a lot of these cases, it'll be kind of a happy compromise where these guys will get some playing time. I think it'll vary a bit individual to individual, but I don't think they're going to, by and large, the guys that are going to the NFL draft get the workload that they did throughout the course of the regular season. And I also think that's a benefit because it does get some of those younger guys and some of the kids that are going to have to step up and be the guy next year at various positions, that opportunity, again, against good competition to get that experience under their belt, and for the coaches and the players to get an idea, okay, this is what we really need to work on in the offseason. Or, yep, you know what, we feel pretty good about what we have here. Let's just, get to work and get ready for next year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it is an indicator of the health of the program where you have so many guys who seem to be comfortable, even though they are going to get ready for the next level, participating in the game. You get the sense, and you definitely had it last year. Now, going back to the way the different bowls are viewed, there's no question the Rose Bowl has a different pull for guys than probably almost any other game, especially because I don't know how much the players were really aware of it at the time, but we're going to look back on that Rose Bowl last year as the swan song of the Big Ten champ versus the Pac-12 champ. Now, occasionally you might see that work out where some former Pac-12 teams are playing maybe a fellow Big Ten member in the quarterfinals in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be what that game was for nearly a century. So clearly there was a lot of motivation for last year's team to play in that game. But again, the Peach Bowl now carries with it a lot of sway because it's part of the New Year's Six. And I think these guys are aware of what it means for Penn State and what it means for themselves too, to be able to say they played in and won a New Year's Six game. To the question of playing time, I this is not an original thought or anything. I've heard other people bring it up, and I think they're right. You can go back and look at the plan Penn State had for Saquon Barkley in the Fiesta Bowl, and that's more or less what I'm expecting to see variations of for guys like Adisa Isaac and Theo Johnson and Kalen King, and I don't know. I do kind of think we might see a little of Olu, but I don't think he may get in the game. I don't think he's going to play a whole heck of a lot. But that's the nature of college football now. That I wouldn't, to what you were saying earlier about Colin Cowherd's comment that these are glorified scrimmages. I wouldn't dismiss it to that level. I do think, and I've said this before, we as fans need to reframe the way we think about the bowl game as less like the last game of this season, even though it is going to get tacked onto this season's record. And it really is more like its own unique bridge from where you were to where you're going, because you're going to get that opportunity to see guys play, especially now that freshmen can play, true freshmen can play in the bowl game and not have it count towards their red shirt. game total, which is more than it used to be. So it really is. It's a fun reward for the players and the fans. You hope to get a good matchup, which I think Penn State has. I think this is a really good pairing for Penn State because you're going to get a good SEC offense versus a great Big Ten defense. You're going to see two teams that I think, despite having some question marks around them this year, are still relatively well thought of. And one of them is going to be able to walk out and say they answered some of the questions people had about them coming out of their two losses. And so, all in all, I think this is about as good a result as you were going to get as a Penn State fan. And if I look at had Florida State not gotten left out of the playoff, we wouldn't have this game because you would have Louisville in the Orange Bowl because of the ACC tie-in if Florida State was playing in the playoffs. So even though I think either one of us were not big fans of that decision, I think it probably got Penn State a better game. I think I would rather play just both from the game on the field and the optics, Ole Miss versus Missouri. And I definitely would not want to be stuck in the position of having to play Liberty.
That would have been just awful. And again, it's not a disrespect to Liberty. It is just that from a perception standpoint, that is truly a no-win situation for your program. You're going to get zero credit. I mean, if Oregon thumps Liberty, everybody's going to yawn and, okay, well, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. If it's a close game, they're going to praise Liberty and question Oregon. And obviously, if Oregon loses that game, it's going to be seen as a disaster in and of itself.
And, I feel like at least when we played Memphis in the Cotton Bowl after the 2019 season, I understand whoever gets stuck playing the group of five team doesn't get to claim bragging rights of somebody who gets a good Power Five matchup in the New Year's Six. But Memphis had a pretty good season that year and had established themselves as one of the most competitive group of five programs. And I think everybody felt like that was still maybe not the best, but a quality win for Penn State.
Yeah.
I don't think you, as Oregon, you're going to get credit for any of that beating Liberty this year. In fact, I think the perception really is that SMU probably ought to be in that game, and that even though going undefeated didn't do anything for Florida State, that Liberty just got the nod because they were the group of five team that had an unblemished record.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And yeah, it's just one of those where you're not going to get any credit for anything good that happens. And again, it's going to be all about you if you don't look good, or certainly if you lose the game. It's not going to be, man, can you believe Liberty? It's going to be, oh, man, can you believe Oregon? And yeah, it's not a situation you want to be in.
Here's an interesting question for you, Head. We both agree, I think, that this matchup versus, getting stuck playing Liberty, fortunately, we dodged that bullet. This matchup is important for Penn State to try to salvage some more credibility for their entire season out of 2023, because the perception is they've lost to the only two good teams on their schedule. I mean, look, sorry, you're just not going to get a ton of credit nationally for beating Iowa because, great defense, non-existent offense. Do you think after West Virginia goes 8-4 and looks as strong as they did in beating North Carolina in that game, that maybe causes people to revise a little bit their view of that game, where that then gets added in, and if you can beat Ole Miss, then people retroactively look back and say, hey, everybody thought West Virginia was going to be a doormat to start the year, and now they turned out to have been a pretty solid team. So then you can point to a couple of quality wins, and
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes down as a quality
You
win.
blew the doors off Iowa. You beat them 31-zip.
Yeah, that's the thing. And so part of this to me, Booch, is let's see how the bowl season plays out here, because Penn State opponents right now are 2-0. The Big Ten is 2-0. So right now, very early, everything is looking good. I do think, listen, if Ohio State beats Missouri, and I think that's going to be a tall order just with the different lineup that the Buckeyes are going to have.
Yeah.
But I give Ohio State certainly a puncher's chance in that game. I don't think it's going to be some monumental upset, even with the roster changes for the Buckeyes. But if they win that game, and the big one is obviously if Michigan can beat Alabama. And I mentioned this last week, and I got some pushback from some of our listeners and viewers that listen, there's Michigan fans know they're going to lose to Alabama. I get that Alabama is the very popular pick in that game. I'm just telling you, having watched both those teams this year, and I get the pedigree of Alabama, I get the problems that Harbaugh has had in bowl games. I understand all of that. I also think that this is a really good Michigan football team. And I don't think this is one of the best Alabama teams. I think it is a really good Alabama team, and I think it is played much better, obviously, toward the end of the season. But I still don't think they obviously looked really good against Georgia. But just before that, they looked very pedestrian against Auburn. And I get the rivalry component there, all of it. I am genuinely surprised at how overwhelming the sentiment seems to be that Alabama is going to win that game. I'm not sitting here telling you it'll be shocking if Alabama wins that game. I'm just telling you, watching both of those teams, and I didn't watch Alabama closely, game in and game out, but I think this is a pretty even matchup, and I think where it counts, Michigan has the edge. I think Michigan's line play has been more consistent than Alabama's.
Yeah.
And I think Michigan is going to be able to run the ball more effectively in this game. And generally, that would give Michigan the edge going into this game. I think that is a fascinating matchup, and I am fascinated by the general perspective that seems to be out there regarding that game and the way it's going to go.
Yeah, I'll buy all of that. I think that you go back 2 years ago to when Michigan played Georgia, and I think, there's similar thinking that maybe because of the style Michigan plays and, that they were going to be a tougher out than some people were giving them credit for, and then they got walloped. I don't know, man. I am inclined to say I believe that Alabama is going to win the game, but I think you hit on it where the matchup, the key matchup is going to be the Michigan run game versus Bama's front seven, because I do think Michigan is going to be able to move the ball on the ground against them. And if they can dictate the pace of play in that game by doing what they want in the run game, that could change the game substantially. And I think you do also make a good point where Alabama now is head and shoulders above where they were at the beginning of the team or beginning of the season. Their offensive line is so much improved from where it was the first few weeks. I can hardly believe it. But even still, they're a notch below the juggernaut Alabama teams we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I do think that the matchup there in that game at the line of scrimmage is going to be really interesting to watch, because it is a veteran Michigan group. It is a younger Alabama group, but they definitely became a cohesive unit on the offensive side as the season progressed.
Jalen Milroe, too, I think deserves a ton of credit for really developing and growing as a player over the season.
He does, Booch. I do wonder how much, and completely agree with you. There's no disputing that. I do think that his maturation very much coincided with the maturation of that offensive line.
Yeah, for sure.
They kind of went together, and I don't know that you necessarily credit one more than the other, or that it much matters. But I do think it's interesting as he got more time, as the running game was able to get going, and he was obviously a big part of that. That it helped open up everything else, and yeah, his command of the offense, though, at this stage, really is impressive for a guy that you thought might be done after the first week of the season as the starter there for the Crimson Tide. I mean, Alabama really is, and it's not often you get to say this about a Nick Saban coach team, but I do think they're one of the great kind of comeback stories of the year in college football, meaning coming back this season, because I don't know. In fact, I think after that Texas game, I would have lost, as I am wont to do. It's why I don't bet. But if you had told me that's the last game Alabama is going to lose this season, after watching them lose that way at home with the schedule that they had remaining, I would have taken you up on that in a heartbeat, because I really thought there was a chance. I didn't think the roof was going to fall in Tuscaloosa, although they might feel like it if they had a 3-loss season. But
Right.
it really felt like this was a team that might be headed to that type of year where, 10-2 was going to be doing something pretty impressive based on what we saw in that Texas game. And, certainly 10-2. And then if they did get to the SEC championship game and a loss to Georgia, the fact that they ran the table there is very impressive. And yeah, again, I'm not going to be shocked here if Alabama wins the game. I do think it's kind of a coin flip type of a game. From Penn State's perspective, and it's a tough one, but from the national perception standpoint, Booch, I do think a Michigan win over Alabama and an Ohio State win over Missouri. And listen, it would help if you get, some other conference teams, Iowa and Rutgers, which is playing now against Miami. If the Big Ten can have a good showing, and in particular Penn State's opponents, yeah, I do think at the end of the day, you may look back a little differently than it felt in the moment of those Ohio State and Michigan losses. If those two teams both end up, if Michigan wins the national title, God forbid, and if Ohio State gets, finishes in the top 6, I mean, it's going to be pretty hard to, and if the Big Ten, has a terrific, only loses 1 or 2 bowl games, I do think that perception of, okay, what Penn State was able to accomplish this year is going to change. But I also think the optimism for next year, Booch, may change a little bit too. Because, again,
no
you're going to have
question.
Aller with another year, obviously starting under his belt. You have as good a backfield as there is in the country. And I think with Kotelnicki coming in, I'm curious to see what Penn State's receivers do in the Peach Bowl. And I'm really excited. When you look at that tight end room next year, Booch, they don't need the wide receivers to be great. It would be wonderful. And yes, do you want somebody to step up and be that go-to clear number 1 guy? Absolutely. But I think this receiving core, if it's just solid, if they can make the consistent catches, if they can be the group we saw in that West Virginia game, going back to the first game of the year, where you got a bunch of contributions from a bunch of different guys, and I thought we saw some signs of that in the Michigan State game. I mean, Omari Evans, who I thought was going to have a pretty big year, had nice game, big catch. I think there's reason to believe that this team could be something pretty special next year.
Yeah, and for all of that to fall into place, you got to get this win against Ole Miss. I mean, this is a pretty important game for Penn State, the more I'm listening to you talk about it, the more I am thinking about the benefits the program can derive over the next 8 months from getting a win here, and the way it lets the fan base, the people inside the football building, boosters, whoever you're going to try to keep your NIL operation flush with cash. There is a lot hanging on the outcome of this Peach Bowl in terms of the vibes that you want fueling your offseason. So yeah, we're fortunate again to have an attractive matchup like this, but then there are stakes attached to it that maybe there aren't if you're playing in the Meineke Car Care Bowl, you know.
Yeah.
By the way, Rutger is currently leading 14-0 in that game, and that would be a great win for the Big Ten. But no non-Penn State Big Ten team am I rooting for harder than the Iowa Hawkeyes. What it would do, not just for Penn State, but for all of our conference bragging rights. If Iowa can find a way to knock off Tennessee, which I think is a long shot, but wouldn't stun me if they just drag them down into like a mucking and grinding game it's one score in the fourth quarter, and they find a way to do it. I would love to see that outcome.
Yeah, and I tell you, Booch, that game feels to me, and we'll see how it plays out. It feels like that could be one of those Iowa specials where, like, the eyeball test tells you, man, Tennessee's a better team, and Iowa just grinds it out, forces a turnover or two at a critical spot, finds a way to get just enough points on the board. I mean, I will not be surprised if that's a game at the end of the day where everybody's scratching their head trying to figure out how Iowa won, but Iowa wins. It just it feels like that very much has the potential to be that type of a game. I also, going back, obviously West Virginia, we talked about getting the win. Northwestern, though, Booch, I mentioned Alabama being kind of a nice comeback story in a way this season. What Northwestern was able to accomplish,
unbelievable,
is truly, like, it is not believable. I mean, when we say unbelievable, like, it is truly not something that was I would have considered in the realm of possibility that this team could get to a bowl game, let alone win one. I would have told you there's not a way that they could win 4 games.
100%. I was just thinking. So that was their 8th win of the season. If you would have come to me in the preseason, and honestly, I don't know if my answer would have changed before or after the Pat Fitzgerald firing. If you said, do you think there is a better chance that Northwestern wins 4 games or that they win none, I would have said none, especially after the Fitzgerald thing. After that went down, I thought, man, that is a bad team. They do not have a lot of talent on that team, and now they have to adjust to having an interim coach, and they've got all that drama in their building. They could go winless. Maybe they'll win 1 or 2 of their yuck games, but they're not going to win any games in the Big Ten. And for them to finish with 8 wins is as remarkable a coaching job as anyone has done there since Gary Barnett took them to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm not sure this isn't a more remarkable feat in and of itself. I'm really not, because that Rose Bowl team obviously felt like it came from nowhere, but there was a lot of veteran leadership. Obviously, there was a lot of consistency in terms of the messaging and the coaching staff and all of that from the previous year. I mean, this was complete upheaval right before the season from a program that, as you said, had no expectations going into the season. I mean, Northwestern was picked to be at the bottom of the West before everything went down with Fitzgerald. And the thing, too, Booch, like, I mean, Michigan has rallied, right, much to my consternation. They have rallied around the perceived, I don't even know what they are perceiving it. I mean, they cheated. They got away with it, and they don't like the fact that people know that they cheated, I guess. I don't even know.
They
But
overcame the adversity of getting caught cheating.
But listen, Michigan, if you're in that locker room, right, you can, hey, it's us against the world. The thing that I thought was the added challenge and why I truly gave Northwestern no chance is it was within the locker room that the issues arose with Pat
Yeah,
Fitzgerald that led to his downfall. What
good
they
point.
were able to do in uniting that locker room and the players that played this season and put away all of the outside noise and what I have to believe were some internal debates, questions, arguments, however you want to phrase it, about how things had been handled at the school that you're playing for. I don't know. That to me just adds another different level. Again, Michigan, it's like, well, we can at least rally and it's us against the world. Northwestern, I think it was much more difficult to do that because it was more, hey, some of the players in our program, certainly several in the very recent past, are the ones that are kind of blowing this thing up. I don't know. I truly think it is one of the most remarkable stories, not just this season, but really in my lifetime in college football in terms of accomplishments from a program that had every reason to not have any success
Yeah.
this season.
Yeah. And, talking about retroactively reframing parts of Penn State's season, I definitely feel better about the rough ride Penn State had in the first half out there when they played at Northwestern because going back to the coaching job that David Braun did, he was the defensive coordinator prior to taking over as the head coach, and he had just gotten there from I think from North Dakota State, I want to say, one of the Dakota schools in January. And the way he had that defense playing throughout the whole season, they were the key to that to the year that they had. They didn't have a particularly dynamic offense, but the defense just kept them in games. And if you got a chance to watch them in the bowl, that's what it was. I mean, they they were not a potent threat offensively in that game, but no matter how many times they fell short on offense, the defense just kept getting them the ball back.
It really was. It was unreal. We'll take a break here. We'll be back with more of the Goon and Ironhead show. Again, we are not at Quaker Steak and Lube today due to logistical issues. So we do encourage you, though, to head on over to Quaker Steak and Lube, a great place to watch the Peach Bowl on Saturday, noon kickoff.
Oh, man, get some wings with your Peach Bowl viewing for sure.
Yep, and we keep talking about it, but I'm telling you, they really do have great food, fantastic bar food, obviously great beverages, and I'm just telling you, Booch, the more I'm out and about over the course of this past year or so, good service is not easy to come by. I'll be charitable and put it that way.
Yeah.
Boy, I am telling you what Jeff Powers and Brenton and everybody at the Lube do in terms of providing service for their customers. It is noticeable. I mean, it does stand out in this day and age when you get that quality service. And
oh man, no question. And we're not just blowing smoke for the sponsor here. This is the honest to God's truth. The consistency and the quality is awesome, which is why I love being connected with them and being associated with them. The other thing I will say too, talking about getting out there to watch any of the bowl games, or we're getting into hockey season now and watching the Penn State game. There's not a bad, in terms of the number of TVs they have and where the tables are situated, there's not a bad seat in the house. So wherever you get seated, you're going to be able to get a good view of the game.
Yep, that is a fact as well. We thank Lion Country Kia, Sioka Motors, and Quaker Steak and Lube for their sponsorship of the program. And we are back with more in Miramar.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
Since retiring, I have spent my time searching the countryside for the hottest wings in America. I always seem to end up disappointed. You call these hot? Back off, Luigi.
Mamma mia.
Look, hands it, busboy. Your wings suck! I knew I should have stuck with Quaker Steak's triple atomic wings. You think I'm tough enough?
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
Sioka Toyota of Williamsport invites you to stop in today or check us out online. We have the smart path to your next Toyota, like the all-new Crown, BZ4X, the all-new Grand Highlander, Corolla Cross Hybrids, Sequoias, and more. Over 100 new Toyotas here and on the way. Don't make a $1,000 mistake. Choose Sioka Toyota of Williamsport and see the Sioka dealership's difference. Buy or reserve yours today and see for yourself why Sioka Toyota is the only stop you need for your next new car. Sioka Toyota, it just feels right.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen Baker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen Baker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen Baker.
The Goon and Ironhead.
And we welcome you back here on this Thursday afternoon as we are right between Christmas and New Year and right smack dab in the middle of bull season, which is my favorite season of the year. And there's been a lot of bad games, and I still like watching them. It's just... I don't know. It's a bad habit, I suppose.
Bad bowl games are fun.
They are, and it's just and it's very different these days. You know that the Syracuse team. We were kind of joking in a group chat I had with some friends. It's like it's almost like Syracuse didn't show up, and that's because they literally didn't show up. They had. I forget. It was an absurd number of opt-outs from that bowl game, and and it looked like it. It looked like they had a team that wasn't ready to go because, it was largely a team that had not been in certainly in starting roles or really in that type of atmosphere previously. So I do think that's a big deal again for this Penn State Ole Miss game is from a fan's perspective. I think it should be a fun watch because this is the Penn State and Ole Miss teams that we saw throughout the season. And I think it makes it more enjoyable and I think easier for fans to identify. Oh, yeah, I remember if I watched Ole Miss earlier this season, these are the players I remember watching in that game, and same thing with Penn State. We keep talking about it. I like the matchup and I like it in more ways than just the fact that it's an SEC team and a game that is relevant. I actually do like the matchup here for Penn State too, Booch. I
do also. Yeah,
this defense just feels even without Chop Robinson, and again, we'll probably have some other guys that will have some limited time. I don't think my guess is Olu Fashanu is going to be the only one that is like severely limited. And I suspect we'll see him for maybe a series. I'm not even sure we'll see him for a full series, but I feel like they're just going to let him get out there, get a little taste of it, and then pull him out. I don't think there's going to be anybody else quite in that boat. Now, there may be some guys that, hey, let's just play a quarter, and if you want to, take off the rest of the game, that's fine. It'll be interesting to see how they handle the cornerback situation in particular, to me, Booch, because your top three guys there are obviously all heading to the NFL. I'm guessing we're not going to see any of them to the degree that we saw during the regular season, but I almost feel like you almost have to have, well, you don't have to, obviously. I think you would really like to have one of them out there pretty consistently. I'm curious to see how they handle that rotation in particular. And then Theo Johnson's the other one that I'm interested to see, because the feeling I get is that he wants to be out there. I think he wants to play all four quarters. But they have obviously a very talented, very young tight end room behind Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson. And by the way, big time news, Booch, that Warren is coming back. I was hoping that was the case, and I made the argument that I thought he was the one guy that could most help his draft status by sticking around another year. But I just thought because of the combine numbers, and that's what Goon said, is, listen, he's going to put up through the roof combine numbers, and they've seen enough that you have a pretty good feel this is a guy that can have success at the next level. Him coming back with the depth they have at tight end, Booch, I do think Penn State is which is remarkable when you're losing a talent like Theo Johnson. I think Penn State is in as good, if not better shape than any program in the country in terms of the tight end position next year.
Yeah. I thought of you when I saw the announcement that he was coming back, Ironhead, and it was a little bit of a surprise to me, honestly, that he's coming back. But I didn't disagree with your premise that he can help his draft stock significantly by being the guy in next year's offense, by being the number one option at the tight end spot. And when you look at Brenton Strange as a second-round draft pick, I don't think that was in Tyler's future this season. But if he comes back next year and he plays consistent with the way he has the last couple of seasons, again, as the number one option at tight end, I think it could be.
Yeah, it'll be fun for fans anyway to watch him and see how it develops next season. But I feel like Theo Johnson is the guy, Booch, where the coaches may in a rare situation be the ones that are looking out more for his self-interest than the player himself.
Right.
And also, I do think they want to get a good look at these young tight ends, which, I think they have a pretty good feel for what they have there. I don't know that they need to go out and necessarily prove anything, but getting a little game experience against an SEC team can only benefit you down the road for sure.
Yeah.
When you look at that side of the ball, Booch, to me, this Penn State offense is, even though I think the featured matchup is clearly the Ole Miss offense against the Penn State defense, the matchup that I'm actually more intrigued by is to see, in particular, this Penn State offense and whether or not we can see a continued transformation of what we saw against Michigan State. And I realize, Michigan State, while it was playing better down the stretch this season, this is not a 10-2 SEC team for sure. I am curious, and listen, so we're clear, when Ole Miss makes its bread and butter this year on offense, this is not a great defense. It's not an awful defense, but this is not. Penn State probably played at least 5 defenses that were every bit as good or better than what they're going to see here in the Peach Bowl. I don't know that Penn State, outside of Michigan, saw an offense that can do as much as what Ole Miss can do. and what I think they will at least try to do in this Peach Bowl. I do think that's a fascinating matchup. But I'm excited, Booch, because I do think Penn State can really utilize the tight end regardless of which tight end is in there or which tight ends are in there. And I think we're going to see more of the offense that we saw in that first game of the year against West Virginia. It's hard to go back now and remember it, but I did go back, and because your perspective obviously changes with each game throughout the course of the season, and you get a prisoner of the moment after each game, win, lose, what you see in that game. But if you go back to that West Virginia game, Booch, the offense looked really good and really diverse. We had a bunch of different receivers making plays. We had Drew Aller taking advantage of the whole field. The running game was productive. It just felt like this was an offense that had a chance to be really special. And with Kodalnicki coming in and waiting in the wings, and I'm sure he's putting his 2 cents. I realize he's not going to be calling the game. He's not going to be, involved in the game day program per se, but have to believe that he's at least whispering in the ears of these guys, man, let's see if we can do something here or there. And he's going to have a good feel anyway after this game of what he has. I am excited to see what I think will be a bit of a preview of what Penn State at least wants to accomplish next season. And as I said earlier, with Drew Aller and with Katron Allen and with Nicholas Singleton all coming back, and now Tyler Warren, right? If the offensive line, which I think is going to be probably the biggest task to me next season, is replacing the key elements there that you're losing in the offensive line. And yes, you need a number one receiver to step up. But I think they're going to be fine at receiver, Booch. I outside of maybe having that definitive number one guy. I think if the O-line is good next year, and I think it will be, I think they've done a nice job now of stockpiling. If they can stay healthy, I think this offense could be something that is pretty special next season. I thought it was going to be this year. I really did.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm thinking about what you said about the diversity and the creativity in the offense in the West Virginia game. And, that's very similar to what you saw out of the Mike Yursich offense versus Auburn when we opened up against them in the 2021 season. And it seemed like as the year went on, the playbook shrunk, and that creative element, which was his calling card, which was why we brought him in here, that vanished from the playbook over the course of the year. And again, I think we saw that this season. What I am most hopeful for on offense in this ball game, Ironhead, is that if you go back to the last 2 games of the season, you figure the tandem of offensive coordinators we have now filling in until the end of this season in Sider and Howell. They had about 5 days to get ready for the Maryland game and a week and a half to prepare for Michigan State. And the improvement from Maryland to Michigan State was evident. And where it was most obvious to me was that really for the first time all season, those 2 weeks, I thought the 2 running backs looked more comfortable and more like their freshman year 2022 selves in those 2 games than they did in any of the preceding 10. And, what exactly it was that changed, whether it's just the way they were being coached, what they were being told to do, what they were being asked to do. Certainly, I think you saw Singleton especially was getting some opportunities to run different kinds of plays than he was while Yursich was making the calls. But in order for Penn State to go where we hope they go next season, which is the 12-team playoff, the offense has got to run through those two guys. And so I think, when you're talking about hitting the tight ends, one of the most effective ways to do that is going to be through play action. And your play action is going to be effective if you're a serious threat to run the ball. So both in terms of beating Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl and giving us good feelings about the team to get excited for in 2024, the thing I am laser focused on, my number one hope for the offense on Monday is that Saturday, is that the two backs in Allen and Singleton continue to look more like the guys we saw in the Rose Bowl than the ones we saw through the first 10 games of 2023.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things, Bush, that I think are going to help that. And one of the things that I think I'm most interested to see in the Peach Bowl is how the running backs are utilized, one, and what they do to try to get, in particular, Nicholas Singleton into space. And, there's ways you can do that other than just running the ball. Obviously, we saw that with Singleton in the Michigan State game. But I also think it is one of the compelling storylines to me next year, Booch, is Bo Prabula and how he is utilized. And Kotelnicki was able to really utilize two quarterbacks very effectively at Kansas. Now, I am not advocating, nor do I believe Penn State will go to a two quarterback format. Not what I'm saying. I think Drew Aller is clearly your number one guy. Bo Prabula is clearly your number two guy. But I do think when you look at the element that Prabula brings, and there was a discussion earlier this week on one of the national shows about the Ravens and how it doesn't seem to matter who they have at running back. Their running game is just effective. And yeah, the offensive line deserves some credit for that, but Lamar Jackson opens up that running game for the running backs, and obviously he himself is a big part of the running game. Again, I am not advocating that you split up the time evenly here between Aller and Prabula, but I do think short yardage situations, it makes a ton of sense to me to get Bo Prabula out on the field. Give that extra option that helps open up the entire offense. And especially when you have the running backs that Penn State does and the tight ends that Penn State does. Again, to me, short yardage situations, Prabula just now gives that extra element. And I'm not even saying in every short yardage situation, you can be unpredictable about when you use them. But I am interested to see, one, how they utilize him here in this game against Ole Miss. But I am really intrigued by what this offense may look like and some of the variations we may see next season with Andy Kotelnicki in charge, and with now an experienced Aller, an experienced Prabula, and all of the other elements on that offense that we've talked about. And maybe we won't see Prabula at all. Maybe I'll be disappointed. I have a feeling we're going to see some really neat little wrinkles thrown in involving him in the Peach Bowl, and I think it's going to lead to just an increased role. And again, I'm not saying decreased snaps for Aller. I'm saying I just think there's going to be an increased role for Prabula next season.
Yeah, I'll buy that. I guess I'll actually be a little surprised if we don't see him at some point in the bowl game, given the fact that he had been worked into the offense the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I am surprised, and for me, disappointed. But and listen, I the other thing with that, Booch, is I think you can have him out there, bring him in as an H-back in some spots. I think there's a lot of things you can do with this offense and with the personnel they have. And listen, I do think Trey Wallace, the injury situation there was a big part. And you can argue, and I'd probably agree with you, too big of a part of the reason why the Penn State offense struggled. That you should be able to lose a receiver and not have your offense fall apart. And it didn't fall apart. I'm overstating that, obviously, but I do think Trey Wallace and his health is a big component, both to what Penn State may be able to do in the Peach Bowl, but certainly when you look at the options and what's potentially available there for this offense next year. They've got to get a few guys to step up. And listen, it'd be great if you can bring in transfer portal guy. It would be great if some of the incoming freshmen step up and make a big splash. But I really think they're fine with what they have. I think it's figuring out the best way to utilize them and then, take advantage of each individual's skill set and kind of cater to what they give you. And I don't think Penn State's offense this year, at least until those final couple of games, really did that. And I would argue, as I did earlier, that the West Virginia game was by far the best game Penn State had in terms of utilizing those guys in the way that made the most sense to take advantage of their individual skill sets and what they could do for the team.
Yeah, and there were guys in that game. Malik McClain is a guy who's coming to my mind, especially, who looked like they were primed to be contributors to the offense for the entire season, and then more or less just disappeared for the rest of the year. And I guess I am still inclined to agree with you, Ironhead, about the talent they have in the receiver room, but it is a much tougher sell at this point. Going into the year, I was not worried about that at all. I said, look, between the number of different styles of receiver that they have and the number of different players, they are going to figure that depth chart out. They got two really good tight ends. They got an experienced number one in Lambert Smith. There's talent there. They'll just make it work. It'll sort itself out. And it just really never did. It just never clicked. And again, going back to what can Kotelnicki bring to the table? At least where we're sitting right now, it does not look like there is going to be a wholesale transformation of that receiver room via the portal, like some people anticipated there might be. So what we had to work with this past season might very well be pretty close to what we have to work with next season. And I'm curious just to see whether he can look at the talent at his disposal and find better ways to utilize it than Mike Yurcich did, because there's no question that for whatever limitations those guys might have, they were not being put in a position to succeed this year.
Yeah, and I do wonder. I know that they got criticized, and I think to some degree rightfully, for not getting the separation was the big term that was thrown around. And listen, I'm sitting here telling you that, yep, they did a great job of creating space. But I think sometimes we're when you go back, and I keep going back to like Trace McSorley. I know James Franklin doesn't like the term throwing it up, and I'm not saying he was just throwing it up and, hey, let's just wing it a prayer and see what happens. But, like, you go back and watch that 2016 team, it wasn't like there were a bunch of wide receivers just running around wide open, nobody around them, and he just, he could have put it anywhere within 5 yards and they were going to go get it. A lot of the plays that were made that year, the big-time plays, there was good coverage. It wasn't like the guys were wide open, but what they were great receivers. They did a great job of playing the ball, looking off the defender, out-leaping the defender, whatever it is. And it just did not feel to me, from the outside looking in and not breaking down it. I'm not one of the guys that sits down and really breaks down tape the way some of the analysts do. But it just felt like Penn State was so afraid of making a mistake, a turnover, that they did not give the receivers, again, just my opinion, enough opportunities to go make plays for your quarterback, who, by the way, I think is a really good quarterback and can make all of the throws.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break here. You are listening to the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead Show. We appreciate your doing so. You are locked in, if you're listening on the radio, to Sports Radio 98.7 The Fox, which is WFXS, Pleasant Gap State College. And again, we are back with more of our Peach Bowl preview show in mere minutes.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia. Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
Since retiring, I have spent my time searching the countryside for the hottest wings in America. I always seem to end up disappointed. You call these hot? Back off, Luigi.
Mamma mia.
Look hands it, busboy. Your wings suck! I knew I should have stuck with Quaker Steak's triple atomic wings. You think I'm tough enough?
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
Sioka Toyota of Williamsport invites you to stop in today or check us out online. We have the smart path to your next Toyota, like the all-new Crown, BZ4X, the all-new Grand Highlander, Corolla Cross Hybrids, Sequoias, and more. Over 100 new Toyotas here and on the way. Don't make a $1,000 mistake. Choose Sioka Toyota of Williamsport and see the Sioka dealership's difference. Buy or reserve yours today and see for yourself why Sioka Toyota is the only stop you need for your next new car. Sioka Toyota, it just feels right.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen O'Habaker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen O'Habaker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen O'Habaker.
The Goon and Ironhead.
And we welcome you back here to the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. The dear Booch filling in for Goon for a bit longer here anyway. We appreciate him doing so under less than ideal circumstances for himself. So we do appreciate playing through some illness here today. So we appreciate it. And Goon will be with us here in fairly short order. Again, Peach Bowl kicks off at 12 noon on Saturday with Penn State and Ole Miss. I mentioned I like the matchup, Booch, and I really think going into this game anyway that Penn State is going to be able to run the ball very effectively. And I have to believe, Booch, that one of the things that this program really wants to establish next season, when you have Kaytron Allen and Nicholas Singleton, you have to run the ball in the Big Ten. If you are going to win the Big Ten, if you are going to be not just a playoff team, but a legit title contender next year, it's going to be through the running backs. I mean, Aller obviously needs to step up and be a great quarterback next year as well. But it feels to me, Booch, like the thing that this team most, I would think, wants to accomplish is, hey, we know we have a running game that we can rely on. And we thought going into this season that that's what they had. and it just didn't pan out that way. To me, on both sides of the ball, I think Penn State wants to control the running game. I think if you're looking for the key stat, at least to me, on Saturday, Booch, turnovers, field position, all of the things that always play into it. But I'm really looking at the rushing yards, and I'm expecting Penn State to have a pretty wide margin in that category at the end of the game.
Yeah. Not to sound like a broken record, but there are so many reasons why getting the run game going on Saturday will be important for the short-term outcome of the game, the long-term outlook of the season. I do think being able to control the pace of play through getting that run game going is important. And again, I think it is important for the confidence of those two guys who, to their credit, were locked in at the end of the season on absolutely no discussion of looking around the transfer portal or anything other than how are they going to continue to get better for Penn State. And, just to flip it around, one of the other matchups I haven't talked about that I think is going to be really important, especially with Chop opting out and Adisa Isaac saying he's going to play. But again, the assumption is maybe he's going to be on a limited pitch count. I am very curious to see what the defensive end rotation looks like.
Yeah.
Because getting pressure, consistent pressure on Jackson Dart could be a boon for Penn State's chances to win the game. And again, we are looking at what is the front four going to look like next season. And I think, Ironhead, I am cautiously optimistic that especially from the edge, we're going to continue to get a very high level of production despite losing two, NFL caliber. I don't know that Adisa is going to be a first-round pick. He certainly could be, depending on how he tests. But I think he's going to be no lower than a second-round pick. And Chop appears to be a consensus first-rounder. It's no small thing to lose two players of that caliber and look ahead to the next season and say there's enough depth there, but that we might not see too much of a drop-off.
And listen, Booch, I think, that it's one of the reasons that I really do think James Franklin does not get enough credit for what he is establishing here at Penn State. But I agree with what you're saying completely. But I think it's, you go to that secondary, you are losing three standout players. I mean, Kalen King is, the Ohio State tape, it'll be interesting. I had a discussion with somebody earlier today. We're talking about Kalen King, and it's like, oh, yeah, but man, Marvin Harrison. And I'm like, well, fair. I mean, Marvin Harrison got the better of him, but I'm not sure we're going to see anybody at the next level that's just going to take Marvin Harrison out of the game. Like, that dude is just that's like saying, well, yeah, our cornerback was good, but Randy Moss kind of ate him alive. Well, yeah, he's Randy Moss. And I really think Marvin Harrison is going to be talked about in that type of way moving forwards. And regardless, I don't mean to get sidetracked with that, but you have three great cornerbacks here in Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, who came on like gangbusters this season.
Yeah, great year from Johnny.
Yeah, a really good career in front of him. And Daquan Hardy, who obviously also had the versatility of giving a real shot in the arm to the punt return game here for Penn State. So you're losing three guys that are going to be playing in the NFL, and two that I think are going to make pretty immediate impacts, at least two that are going to make immediate impacts in the NFL with their respective teams. And to your point, I'm not worried about that secondary and what it's going to be able to accomplish next season. And I just think you can probably start going through position by position, and it's kind of the same thing, at least to me, Booch, is that this group has this team, this program has gotten to the point, tight end, we talked about it earlier, but I mean, you're losing Theo Johnson, who's a fantastic tight end. And I'm not sure that at the end of the day, that group next year isn't going to be better than the Tyler Warren, Theo Johnson combo that you had this year. Because So bottom line is I think there's a lot of reason for optimism for Penn State. One of the other things that I think will be interesting in this bowl game is how they utilize the linebackers. How much do we see from a guy like Rojas, who obviously can be a big part of the equation next year. Needs to be a big part of the equation next year. But, I think the other thing there is what does Penn State do schematically? Do you have a shadow for their quarterback, or do you kind of play it more straight up? I'm interested to see kind of who gets what assignments and how they approach this Ole Miss offense in that regard. I'm presuming you are leaving us, or you're going to stick around, Booch. I'm okay either way.
I am probably going to bail out here now that the Goon is on board. We'll make it the Goon and Ironhead show again, but I'll give an official prediction before I leave. I have liked Penn State's chances in this game since the matchup was announced. I got a little nervous when we had not heard from any of the defensive backs, the starting corners, about whether or not they're going to play in the game, again, just because of the nature of a Lane Kiffin offense. But now that it looks like we are going to get some snaps out of, I guess, probably all three of them. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I'm really interested to see how they rotate through, because like some of these guys, I'm expecting to maybe just see action in the first quarter, or like Olu again, I think would be the one that maybe just the first series, or maybe not even that. But the cornerbacks, I would think, if they can set it up and everybody's agreeable to it, that you're going to kind of rotate through those guys so that at least one of them is out there. Like, I don't think you want to have Johnny Dixon out there with Kalen King for like the first quarter and then see both of them out the rest of the game.
Right.
I don't know, obviously, how that's going to be working or what the setup is, but I'm hoping that it's, we kind of see at least one of them out there for pretty much the entire game here on Saturday.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be a big boost to Penn State's chances. We've got a nice little streak going on in these New Year's Six games. I love the trivia point of Penn State being the first school to win all six if they can do it. Big time for James Franklin too. He'll have wins in 4 out of the 6 if he can get this victory. And I think the Nittany Lions are going to do it. I think on obligatory, I picked 31-24. So let's just stick with that score. I do think that Ole Miss is going to be able to move the ball, even against Penn State's very good defense. But I do like the ground game to show up big time, and I like Penn State to get it done.
Sounds good to me. We'll take it, and thank you, Booch, for everything.
My pleasure, guys. I hope everybody out there has a great New Year's, and I hope at some point when they're watching bowl games, maybe the Penn State bowl game this weekend, they do it at Quaker Steak Lube.
Amen. Appreciate it.
Get better.
Yep. Thanks, Goon. Take care, guys.
All right. See you, Booch. Thank you. And the dear Goon now joins us, and we are back to the Goon and Ironhead show here on this Thursday. And Goon, let's just start with kind of your thoughts on this matchup. And are there certain things that you really like in terms of the head-to-head matchups here with the Ole Miss, and is there anything that you're particularly concerned about in terms of any area on the field going into this game on Saturday?
It'd be interesting to see which Ole Miss is going to show up. I mean, historically, the SEC, it's like one of those, when they lose a bowl game, they didn't want to be there. They didn't want to play type of thing. And It's not that you guys would beat them, but they have the ability to kick our doors in. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think this team they're pretty motivated. And to dovetail, what Booch was just talking about, he stole my thunder a little bit. And, and that is that James doesn't get enough credit. If he wins this week, that's 4 major bowls for him. And, he's 52 years old. That's damn good. And then, I love the fact that Penn State would be the first ever to win all 6 major bowls. I found that as soon as I heard that stat earlier in the year, I was like, all right, let's do this. And I do like the Ole Miss matchup personally. I like the Lane Kiffin thing because I think Lane Kiffin is a pretty damn good coach. So I'm looking forward to it, but I'm interested to see which Ole Miss shows up. The guys that they don't want to be there. And some of their guys have opted out, whereas our guys are, most of them, if not all, we get Chop, and then you saying Olu might go like a series or two. The fact that they're even playing is great. I can't believe he's playing, but thank God he is. He's a heck of a player, and these guys are playing as a team. If you listen to everything they say, me and my brothers are going to be out on the football field one more time. And that's how they truly think about each other. That's a great thing, and it's a real credit to what James is doing with the program.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is going to be interesting, Goon, and we've been talking a little bit about what we're expecting and how Penn State might handle the playing time for a bunch of these guys. And obviously these are conversations that have already occurred, and everybody's on the same page and presumably agreeable to it. And we'll find out, obviously, as the game unfolds here on Saturday. But the one area that I am really curious about, Goon, is the offensive line. And obviously, I'm not expecting Olu to play much at all on Saturday. And that makes sense. And I suspect that'll be as much James Franklin saying, Olu, we're not going to put you at risk for what, the potential that's awaiting you and your future family. But Caden Wallace and Hunter Norzad, Goon, I think are really interesting cases here for Penn State. And, we talk about the continuity in that offensive line and how important it is. And I think Caden Wallace, we had talked earlier about, Tyler Warren coming back, and you and I had talked, and I said, I think that's a guy that could really help his draft status by coming back for another year. Very grateful that he is. And, it certainly would have made sense either way. But in this particular game, Goon, I'm not sure that Caden Wallace isn't the guy that could most improve his draft stock, only because he's going to be going against an SEC defense. And I get that it's not Alabama or Georgia. This isn't a great SEC defense by any stretch, but it is an SEC defense. And I do think Caden Wallace, if he goes out and has a really good showing in this game, I think that is going to help him with at least some team out there. Some team's going to look at that and say, listen, we thought he was pretty good, but look at the way he goes out here in this bowl game against an SEC defense. And Hunter Norzad may be able to get himself a roster spot on an NFL team by kind of the same thing, having a good showing here. Those two guys, you can certainly make the argument that, hey, we want to preserve their health and we don't want to see them out there a whole lot. I have a feeling, we'll see how it plays out. I just have a feeling both of those guys may be out there, if not for the entire game, for a large chunk of it.
Yeah. Again, my hat is way tipped and way off to Olu for coming back this season, but we've talked about that repeatedly. The fact that he's even going to dress up on Saturday and play is amazing to me. And again, you got to give James a lot of credit for this, because these kids want to play and they want to win. I love the way their attitude is. And you don't, honest to God, do you really see that at many other colleges? I don't. I really don't. These kids are more worried about their NFL careers, where our guys are just saying, I want to go out with my brothers one more time. And, the knock on James is, if you want to go win titles, go to Ohio State or Michigan. But if you want to be best friends with the coaches, go to Penn State. I've heard that before. But that's not a bad thing. It really is not a bad thing. These guys are playing hard, and they're playing for each other, and they're playing for their school, and they're playing for their family, which is in that locker room. And I love that. But, I got to tell you this. I got to get off my chest because you're talking about, going up against an SEC defense. So, my last game at Penn State was against Auburn. And I was just sitting there. I was like, oh, God, I didn't look at the weather for this weekend to see what the game's going to be on Saturday. And I was like, oh, my God, it's a dome. I was almost – when you guys were talking, I was about ready to look the weather up for Saturday in Atlanta. But it's going to be pretty good, 72 degrees, and nice sunshine coming through the windows. So, Olu, again, the hat is off. But Caden, he can definitely make a name for himself with what he could do this weekend. He can – really, really up his worth and his value with a good game against an SEC defense.
Yeah, I think, again, it'll be interesting to see how Penn State handles these guys that are heading into the NFL draft and what kind of playing time and what kind of rotation some of these positions have in the bowl game on Saturday. But from the matchup standpoint, again, Goon, I think Penn State has the advantage on both lines of scrimmage. I really do. And I think, that's a pretty good place to be if you're going into a game and, trying to figure out who's going to win. Generally speaking, if one team has the advantage on both the offensive and the defensive line, as long as you can take care of the ball, you're going to come out on top. But I really do. I think Penn State's going to have, as I mentioned toward the end there with Booch, I am curious to see what schematically Penn State does defensively. Excuse me. And, how they approach this Mississippi offense. But I really have a good feeling going into the game anyway about what Penn State's going to be able to do running the ball. And I think that's going to help open things up. I think this offense is going to my guess for the headline Sunday morning is look out. Penn State's offense is on track to be a playoff caliber offense in 2024.
I agree. And then, it starts with the run game up front, obviously. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know I'm going to say. Of course I'm going to say that it's going to start with the run game. But, it's these bowl games, again, they get a little weird. It's, again, I go back to who wants to be there, who doesn't want to be there. So, this is Ole Miss. I mean, they're relevant, but they haven't been super relevant for years. So, in the last 5 years, they become relevant with Kiffin. So this is their next step. So I expect a hell of a game. I really do. I'm thinking it's going to be a really, really hard-fought game. But I just think that we are just going to go out there because I think it means a little bit more to us. It really does. And I don't know what it is about it, but we've always played well in bowl games, and it's always been like a launching point towards the next season. Because I will tell you that losing a bowl game just gives you that sour taste in your mouth until your next game. And that's not until West Virginia, by the way, who looked great last night. You're not going to have an opportunity like that until West Virginia on Labor Day weekend next year. So you got to sit around for 9 months with a loss in your back. And I don't think that James doesn't like that. The players don't like that. We don't like that as fans. So that is the way traditionally we would kick off the season for next year. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, the way the portal's working and stuff like that, I know that Penn State has not had an issue with it, but, a lot of these bowl games, you're seeing teams that are completely remodeled. Like, a lot of their star players aren't playing. So, we were talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. He's not going to play in that game. So how does their offense change? I mean, it changes considerably. Is McCord, is he at Syracuse already? So he's actually done with Ohio State?
Yes, he's not with Ohio State.
Wow, it's just crazy. I mean, how do you do that to your guys? And, we'll go all over in the offseason. We don't have much to talk about. But, I mean, the portal something needs to be done where, it's like a guy like that leads his team, but he has to get to his new university before the school year starts. So it's sort of like they really need to fix it and the timing of all of this, in my opinion, with the portal and guys leaving because – McCord deserves to be the quarterback there, but he couldn't do it because it's going to be in the next semester. He has to be up at Syracuse. So it sort of stinks for them. And, I like the fact that all of our guys are playing, and Ole Miss guys. There's some of them are out, and again, like I said, we don't know how they're going to come out and play. It might be a big thing for them. Like we played Tennessee 2 times in bowl games when I played, and they didn't want to be at either game. They didn't want to be there. They were just down there partying, and we went out and shellacked them both times. So, we're going to see what Mississippi's going to be like this week.
Yeah, Goon, I really think both teams are really hungry, and there's a reason there's only one opt-out for each team in this bowl game. Yep. I do think this means a lot to the players and the coaches, and I think they understand the significance of this game, both for this year's team, and Butch and I talked about it a little bit earlier, but both of these teams are kind of looking for that signature victory of the season, and this will provide it. For whoever wins this game, this is a big win for that team and that program, and it's a great way to obviously cap off this season, but it's also a launching pad. And I think both of these programs and teams have playoff aspirations next season and really believe like they are ready to finally take that next step. I think both thought this might be the year they could do it, but Mississippi is really well positioned to make a special run next year. They're having success with the transfer portal in a big way. Penn State has not had, at least to this point, as much success with the transfer portal. I'm not sure that's as big of a deal just because of what Penn State has coming back next year. There's certainly, I know people were looking at a wide receiver, and Bush and I talked about that a little bit earlier. I actually think that wide receiver room's now better than what fans were thinking. It might not have been as good as what fans were thinking going into this season. And by the way, fans and media, I'm right there with you. At the start of the season, I thought, and especially after that West Virginia game, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all these options. And then it just seemed like nothing really came to fruition the way you were hoping in the receiving core. But I still think there's a lot of talent in that receiving room. And I think they're going to come up with, better schemes next year, better ways to utilize the talent they have. And, part of it is, Goon, I'm just very optimistic that this running game, which I think is going to look good in the bowl game, is going to be back to form and then some next year. I really think this running game has a chance to be something very, very special.
I like the opportunity for our OCs and our new DC. This is their last game in that position. It's just like they're going to just let it roll, man. I really think they're going to have some fun with it going out there, and like I said, from after the Ohio or Michigan State game when it was the last game of the year when they were just throwing the ball around, having fun out there, letting it loose a little bit. I think that's going to come into play a little bit tomorrow. I'm sorry, on Saturday, with offensively, I think they're going to just try and have fun. I mean, that's the thing about bowl games. I think that James has it nailed down pretty good. It's a reward. It's a time to go down and have some fun, but you also got to play a football game, and you got to win the football game first to have a great time. So I'm very, very interested to see how our offense plays with our, with Cedar and Ty, and then our DC. Are they going to blitz more? I don't know. Are they going to blitz less? Are they going to put more man coverage? Who knows what's going to go on? So, it's a very exciting game for me because I'm not a big Lane Kiffin fan type of person. But he's a heck of a coach. He's got a good program going right now. And then the other thing is that you're saying that they're doing great.
Well, I think you froze up on us a little bit there, Goon. So hopefully we'll get you right back here. But yeah, when you look at the matchup here, kind of position by position, I do think Penn State has the edge, and I don't think it's a wide gap, but I mean, I do think Penn State has the edge on both the offensive and the defensive line. I think you'd probably give Ole Miss the edge at at this point at quarterback, although obviously I think Aller is capable of having a huge game in the Peach Bowl and could put up better numbers. But I think the receiving core, again, at this point, you would give the advantage to Ole Miss. And, linebacking core, I think, is probably pretty comparable, but the secondary is certainly advantage Penn State. So at the end of the day, I think Penn State has more of the check marks, if you will, if you go position by position. But I think motivation wise and, from like Florida State obviously is not excited to be in the bowl game with the opt-outs that they have. And I get it. I mean, you went undefeated, you won a Power 5 conference, you think you should be playing for the national title, and now you're not. It certainly makes a ton of sense that you're not.
Hey,
Doing back here.
I apologize there. My phone shut me down. I get overheated.
No worries.
Yeah, I heard you talk about Florida State there. So that Louisville game didn't go too well last night. And my last check was Miami struggling against Rutgers right now. So the ACC, I don't know how good they really were this year. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of their bowl games go. I mean, UNC did not look good. Louisville, Miami, and the Florida State thing. They deserve to go to that title to the playoff, in my opinion. But if that's the way it's going to be, I mean, they're really not that good. The ACC was just a really bad year.
Yeah, it was an off year. I don't know. I know there's a bunch of people making that point. To me, I think you get in real danger when you start doing the comparative scoring. Every game and situation is to me kind of unto itself, and there's just a different feel. I don't know how excited. I mean, we presume that Louisville was pumped up about being there and playing USC. USC, I will say, had a ton of players, like the players that were playing there, and I get it. They had a lot of opt-outs also. Those guys, though, were very excited and were out to prove a point, and obviously did. There's a lot of national folks that are making that point, Goon, that, listen, Florida State edged Louisville. Now Louisville gets waxed by, a subpar, by their standards, USC team. I don't think I know people are acting like you can. I don't think you can use that and say, well, boy, it's a good thing Florida State isn't there. I don't know that a motivated Florida State team that sat around for a few weeks and listened to everybody say they had no chance to beat a Michigan or whoever they would have played. Again, we'll never know. But, you just go to the NFL. I mean, a Steelers team that loses to the Cardinals turns around and beats the Bengals. Well, I mean, if you just took the Cardinals game in and of itself, it's like, oh man, the Steelers have no chance. Or I mean, the Steelers beat the Ravens earlier this year, right? Like you're not. So I get that we all do that, and I do it too. It's like, wow, yeah, boy, Florida State would have gotten waxed clearly. Listen, do I think they probably would have? Yes. But again, we'll never know because we're not seeing the game. And you just see all of the time that the comparative scoring never really holds up. It's about matchups and individual games. It's about motivation in individual games. And there's just so many things that come into play for it that I don't get as caught up as I think many are. That, thank goodness, Florida State being in there would have been awful. I thought beforehand that, probably Florida State would not fare well against any of those top three teams with the quarterback situation that they currently have. But I also, I didn't think TCU would beat Michigan last year. I certainly didn't think Georgia would beat TCU the way they did last year. So it's sports and goofy things happen. That being said, Big Ten is off to a good start. Looks like if Rutgers holds up here, they'll be off to a 3-0 start in the bowl season. And then when you look at the teams that are coming into the Big Ten next year, right, like this is looking pretty promising, Goon, for where the Big Ten is going to be in the overall picture next year. And I think, and again, this is something Bush and I talked about a little earlier, but the perception of this Penn State season, I think, is going to be interesting, Goon, once this bowl season plays out. And again, we got to see, how does Michigan fare in the playoffs? What does this revamped Ohio State roster do against a Missouri team that I think is going to be very hungry and motivated in that bowl game? But we'll see once all of this plays out. But I think there's the potential that we're going to look back and say that 10-2 that felt like a big time disappointment actually is pretty doggone good when you look at the win over West Virginia, the blowout victory over Iowa. And again, at the end of the day, even in the two losses, competitive games against two of the teams that, probably at the end of the day, if Ohio State has its full roster, I think you're talking about two of the top 5-6 teams anyway in the country. It's not a bad spot that Penn State's in at the end of the day.
I mean, how many people would change it? I mean, and change with us. Sorry, a lot of people would. A lot of teams would do that to have a 10-2 type of year, and again with a bowl win in a the top 6 bowl, it'll be a huge thing. I mean, I gotta ask you. I know we're going to get into it, but are you falling for the Michigan thing again, or are you? I'm just like that. Their bowl record historically is just so bad. I can't get behind them on this. I'm just like sitting there. I'm like, they've done nothing but destroy people this year, no doubt about it. But they did the same thing last year, and then they went out to TCU and got absolutely destroyed. I don't know what to think of it. What's going to go down? What's going to happen in that game?
Yeah, I think both of these semifinal games are going to be terrific games and very good. I think Michigan's going to find a way to win, which, again, if you're a Michigan fan, and part of me is doing this just I want to be able to stick you a little bit at the end of the day. Man, you guys didn't win, and I thought you would. It seems like everybody is picking Alabama to win that game. And again, I'm not going to tell you I'm shocked if Alabama wins it, but yes, to answer your question, I am buying Michigan again now this year. And I think, there's a couple of things that are a little different. I do think a healthy Blake Corum is a different dynamic for that running game. And, it helps open things up for J.J. McCarthy and the rest of that offense. But I also do think, and, I might despise it, but I do think Michigan has that us against the world mentality. They feel that they've been wronged because people are accusing them of cheating when all they did was go out and cheat. And so, somehow this is some sort of grand, ugly mark against the rest of society that you guys are holding Michigan accountable. But listen, they're using it. And they do have that us against the world mentality. And I do think I do think this is Michigan's best team yet across the board. And I do think, while I won't be surprised if Alabama goes on and wins the national title this year, I don't think this is one of the top 5 Nick Saban coached Alabama teams. Again, those teams are among some of the best in college football history. So this is not exactly a damning condemnation of the Crimson Tide this season.
Right.
And I do think Alabama is probably from late September to now as improved as any team out there in college football. So I guess I understand to some degree Alabama. People thinking Alabama is really good. I am a little surprised at how few people seem to be giving Michigan a real shot here in this game, because in my mind, going into this game, Michigan should be the very slight favorite. But I think Michigan's been the more consistent team throughout the year. I think Michigan has the better running game going into this thing, and I think Michigan's been a little more consistent with its defense over the course of the season. And again, I won't be shocked if Alabama wins the game and goes on and wins the national title. But I don't know. I do have a feeling Michigan, much to my dismay, is going to find a way to win this game, and we're going to have to put up with Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan fans for at least another week plus.
Yeah, no doubt about it. On paper, yeah, Michigan should win this game, but their history in bowl games is just so bad that I just don't see how that changes. I have heard rumors that they have changed their practices up a little bit than they have been in recent years. He's not hitting as much. He's not running in as hard. So, it's going to be a great game. And we can sit here and say that we think Michigan's going to win, but are you going to root for them? That's the question, Head. I can't.
And, it's tough because, listen, a Michigan win here like Rutgers beating Miami is good. Northwestern winning was good. West Virginia winning is good. Michigan winning is going to really change, I think, the perception of this Penn State season, probably more than any other individual game. I think the West Virginia win does help Penn State because not only did they win, they won convincingly.
Yeah.
And again, part of this is difficult because you don't know all of the motivations and stuff in the bowl games and the opt-outs. Obviously, you're the guy that made everything go in North Carolina wasn't there for the bowl game in terms of playing. So that it does change. And, just like if Ohio State loses to Missouri, so, okay, it is what it is, but that's not the Ohio State team all season long.
No.
Now, some teams respond well. And listen, I think Ohio State is well positioned. Like USC had a bunch of players out, but they are stocked at the skill positions. And you knew that going in. And those guys obviously seized the opportunity. Miller Moss had a terrific game, but those receivers, the young receivers for USC were absolutely terrific. Well, Ohio State, it's not as though they are devoid of talent.
They're the next 5 stars. So
yeah, so even though Ohio State is going to be without a lot of its starters and a lot of the guys who made plays throughout the course of the season for them, and listen, there is no other Marvin Harrison waiting in the wings for the Buckeyes, but listen, I think Ohio State could still go out and beat Missouri. I don't think that's going to be some sort of monumental Herculean task for the Buckeyes. But yeah, going in, I would give Missouri a bit of an edge because I think they're the hungrier team. I think they're more excited about being in that game. And obviously, I think they'll have. I know they'll have more of their starters and kind of regular players from the regular season. But if Ohio State can win that game and Michigan beats Alabama and at least gets to the championship game, with the way everything else is shaping up, that Northwestern win was big. I think you could end up looking back. We talked about the Iowa-Tennessee game earlier. If Iowa can win that game too, Goon, that's a big one in terms of the Big Ten SEC perception.
Sure.
I think you may end up having national folks as well as locally, you're looking back at this season and maybe having even a little more positive spin than what was there, certainly when the regular season ended.
Yeah, that's a huge game. You're right. If those two go out and lay eggs and we play well, does that make it, is it a successful season type of thing? If they go out and, like Ohio State, it's not an Ohio State team that we played. It's so bad. And it's like the hardest thing to grasp about bowl games now is how drastically they've been changed with the transfer portal and with the whole opting out of playing and all. So I mean, everything changes, and I mean, is Michigan going to be the Michigan of old and not play well in a bowl game? They're more worried about playing for Big Ten titles than national titles, which I'll never understand, but that's their way of thinking sometimes. But I'm gonna. I think that Michigan is going to win that game. I personally think Michigan is going to win the national title, and that's going to make it all that more important when all the sanctions come down on Harbs and his crew about all the cheating things. So, and the other thing I was thinking about in the other national title, the playoff game, is I forgot Sarkisian was Washington's coach for a hot minute.
Oh yeah.
So he's got a little bit of angst in there, I'm sure, towards Washington, and I'm sure they have with him too. I mean, he left there, right, to go to USC.
Well, yeah, and I'll tell you that game to me, Goon, is. I'm hoping it lives up to my expectation because I think it could be just a wild shootout. Like those two quarterbacks could put on just an unbelievable show. I mean, that game, the winning team might need to get to 50 to pull out the victory, which, again, from an entertainment standpoint, I think would be fun. I think the Alabama-Michigan game will be better overall football, but might not be quite as entertaining or like the scoring.
Somebody's in the driveway. Holy crap. Holy crap, man.
Go get them, dogs. Go get them.
Yeah, right?
I think that's our cue, Goon, that the Huskies are going to.
I apologize.
The Pooches are taking one.
Holy crappy. Just UPS, man. It's just UPS guy. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I mean, how about – I don't think the NCAA was doing too much thinking having these games on Monday night. 8:45 at night is the last game. I mean, that's and you're talking about going to work on Tuesday. Everybody's going back to work pretty much on January 2nd. It's like, wow, how many people are going to watch that game at 8:45 at night? I mean, I know we will, obviously, but I mean, I don't know. I think they sort of screwed it up a little bit with the timing and how they're playing those games.
Yeah, I'm not making any promises, Good. I mean, I'm going to try, and I'm planning on it. But, man, my eyes get heavy around 9:30, 10 o'clock. I'm not
Absolutely.
making any promises that I see at the end of that one.
Absolutely, they do. I mean, we're both in the 50s now, man. So that's how it works.
Let's talk a little bit. We have a few minutes left. I do want to talk some NFL here, Goon. My beloved Steelers clearly back on the Super Bowl track. Mason Rudolph probably going to win Super Bowl MVP this year. For a while there, I was worried about the Steelers, Goon, but everything's okay after the big 34-11 win over the Bungles.
It's funny how that happens, isn't it? Just get a couple wins. I mean, I've seen them. I mean, the Eagles beat the Giants the other night, but it was like a horrible game, and the fans were booing a win. I mean, are you spoiled, or are you just worried about the team being a little bit, out of whack, in my opinion? But the Steelers, that come out of nowhere, really, to me. I mean, they just dominated that game from start to finish, and just enough to keep you guys in the backing them and rooting for them. But it also puts you closer to the back of the draft. There, it's like I know some Steeler fans will say they would have lost out and got a higher draft pick. So, what say you? What do you think?
Well, two things. This game Sunday at Seattle is really intriguing to me because it feels like a winnable game, but a obviously very tough assignment for a team that lost 2 games at home to 2-win teams to go across the country and take on a solid Seahawks team. This isn't one of the great teams in the NFL, but it's good. They do everything well. And it is going to be a very tall order for the Steelers. But if they can tap back into that Mason Rudolph magic, hey, listen, Rudolph is not your long-term solution, but we've seen it. There are these backups that they get on a roll for 3 or 4 games. That's what they do right now in order to get into the playoffs. And yes, even my optimistic diehard Steelers self realizes This is not going to be a Super Bowl season for these Steelers, but getting into the playoffs, especially after the 3 weeks prior to this past weekend, would be no small feat for this team. And I think the big question mark, Goon, and I just don't know what the answer is going into next year, is quarterback, and whether Kenny Pickett is the guy or not. And I just don't think we haven't seen anything to this point that would, lead you to believe, okay, no question about it, you have your franchise guy for the next decade. We're set. Like, there's nobody, I think, that believes that. But I don't know that we've seen enough and that we're far enough along in his development to decisively say, yep, this isn't that guy. I think you need another year of him with hopefully a good offensive coordinator to see. And again, I don't have, and I've really been kind of this mindset from the day he was drafted. I'm like, I hope it works. I can see it working. But I've never had strong feelings one way or the other. Like, Kenny Pickett didn't wow me in college. I'm like, yeah, it seems like he's making good progress. Seems like he could be a good quarterback. When they drafted him, I'm like, yep, that's all right. It makes sense to me. I don't know that that's our long-term answer. And now, after 2 seasons, I'm like, yep, I don't know if that's our long-term answer. There's some things there I like. There's some things I'm concerned about. And I just think you need to see another year. So with that, I don't think the Steelers are in a position where they're necessarily going out and, hey, we've got to go get a quarterback and, let's go make a play for, one of the veterans, of Russell Wilson, that looks like could become available here, or that you use a first-round draft pick. But, I mean, it is a concern. Like, I don't think you can feel rock solid that, all right, yep, we have the next long-term answer here at quarterback. And that's a little bit of a tough position to be in, because I do think the Steelers have pretty much everything else in place there. When they're healthy, that defense is really good. That receiving core is really talented and should be really good. Freiermuth is a great tight end. I think they have 2 good running backs, and I think they have a solid offensive line. Like, it really does come down to, can Kenny Pickett take that next step? And again, he doesn't need to be Patrick Mahomes, but he needs to be, a top 10, 12 guy. He needs to be in the Tua Tagovailoa neighborhood next season and moving forward for you to feel good about where the Steelers are. And I can't sit here and tell you one way or the other whether or not I think that's going to happen. I'm like, I don't know.
You mentioned the Russell Wilson thing. What a mess and a fiasco that is out there. That's really showing your organizational true colors, in my opinion, how they went about that. But you know what? As guys you talk to or know from the NFL, that happens on a daily basis, man. That's not the first time something like that happened when it comes to money, especially numbers like that. But what they had given up to get him. So yeah, Russell might be a pretty good pickup. But I got to give Mason Rudolph deserves a lot of credit, man. I mean, he sat back, didn't say anything for 2 years. They bring in Trubisky to back up Kenny or back up Pickett and stuff like that, and he didn't say a word. He just went about it and did everything he could do to get better. And I think he really did improve. He played. That was a heck of a game the other day. They played. So, he deserves a lot of damn credit, I'm sure. I mean, I think the most of the credit goes to him because he could have packed it in 2 years ago, in my opinion. How he was treated out there with they drafted Pickett, they signed Trubisky and stuff like that. So he had felt a little bit of disrespect, but he just marched on and played well. And what do they need? 2 wins to get to 10? What are they, 8-8 right now? What's the record?
8-7. Yep, with 2 games.
So he needs to win the 2 to get the winning record, right? Because there's 17 games now.
Just needs 1 more.
Yep. He has to win 1 of the 2. Sorry, Jesus.
Yeah,
my head's all.
Or at Baltimore. Real quick, Goon, prediction for Saturday.
I got us 38-14. I really do. I just think it means a lot to our guys, and I don't think Ole Miss is going to show up, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss is going to show up. I just think Penn State's the better team. I have it Nittany Lions 34, Rebels 20.
Nice.
We will talk to you on Tuesday. We'll analyze that and all of the weekend sports action. Have a happy New Year, Goon. We'll talk to you on Tuesday.
You guys, take it easy, man. Be safe. Happy New Year.
Yes, indeed. Till Tuesday. Enjoy the new year. Be good and be safe. And again, we'll talk.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
Since retiring, I have spent my time searching the countryside for the hottest wings in America. I always seem to end up disappointed. You call these hot? Back off, Luigi.
Mamma mia.
Look hands it, busboy. Your wings suck! I knew I should have stuck with Quaker Steak's triple atomic wings. You think I'm tough enough?
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
Sioka Toyota of Williamsport invites you to stop in today or check us out online. We have the smart path to your next Toyota, like the all-new Crown, BZ4X, the all-new Grand Highlander, Corolla Cross Hybrids, Sequoias, and more. Over 100 new Toyotas here and on the way. Don't make a $1,000 mistake. Choose Sioka Toyota of Williamsport and see the Sioka dealership's difference. Buy or reserve yours today and see for yourself why Sioka Toyota is the only stop you need for your next new car. Sioka Toyota, it just feels right.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen Baker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen Baker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen Baker.
The Goon and Ironhead.